Cities are not just physical constructs, but also moral and ideological ones.
It's a genocide of places and spaces and communities. You put on it the label of development.
Are we closely aligned now to Western standards of urban development?
It's not only that we produce places, but we also consume places. The Hajj costs £1,700,000 Egyptian pounds. And this is something like $35,000. From the Egyptian scene, 2.9 million have been displaced because of urban planning. Once you have urban segregation, we are not brothers and sisters anymore. In Muslim cities, fiqh is away from that. You can write a post or a tweet, but it's not the same active participation that it used to be in many of the Muslim capitals.
Are modern cities killing our souls? Dr Heba Raouf Ezzat teaches in the Department of Political Science and Sociology at Ibn Haldun University and was formerly a professor at Cairo University and at the LSE.
Dr Heba Raouf Ezzat, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to the Thinking Muslim.
Thank you. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Well, it's great to have you with us. Now, today we're going to have, I think, a fascinating conversation about cities. I suspect a lot of our viewers will think why we're taking a sociological turn here, because normally we stick to politics and intellectual ideas on this program. And I think that I heard you talk about this subject at the Ummatics conference here in Istanbul, and I found it absolutely fascinating. So I want to start with what you argued, your central argument, I felt anyway, in your presentation, and that was that you argued that cities are not just physical constructs, but also moral and ideological ones. Now, I've always believed cities are bricks and mortar, and so value neutral. So you could have, a city that looks like London in the Muslim world, and it wouldn't be odd in the Muslim world. But you argued something quite fundamentally different. Like, how do modern cities reflect dominant civilizations and values of our time?
It's not only actually about modern cities. Yeah, it's about any city.
Yeah.
I originally come from political theory background,
Yes.
so I was not interested in space and place, and I was more interested in ideas, the history of ideas, and also the different notions, conceptual analysis of power, sovereignty, nation, ummah, these concepts. Yeah. And I was doing my PhD in the topic of citizenship, the notion of citizenship in Anglo-American liberal thought.
Really?
And then I started realizing that all those who are talking about cities, even in the language itself, coming from the Greek and then the Latin and so on, that citizenship is related to living in the city.
Right.
So when you talk about citizens, they are the members of the political community in a city. And then starting from the Greek thought that we study and teach, you have the direct democracy where people come together. So we take it as a phenomena, but we don't realize the theater, that they came together in a place. And hence, whoever designed the city, however it developed, it allowed space for people to come together, thousands of people, so there is this big space where they come, and then there are the institutions and organizations of political management of everyday governance here. So I started giving more attention to spaces and cities, and then I became very interested in urban sociology. At Cairo University, where I originally studied as an Egyptian, and where I also taught for a long time, political science is very classic in a way. So study of urban sociology is not very common. But I tried to introduce it to political theory classes, etc. And then I started realizing that every phenomena we study, it's important to add the bit of the urban and material and the spatial. So the picture, it's as if the picture is a puzzle, and this is the missing piece of the puzzle in our political and sociological analysis generally, political sociology generally. Yeah. So I think that this sociological turn towards space and place, and also in social other social sciences like political theory, the space and place started getting more attention, and that it's not only that we produce places, but we also consume places. And the place is consumed by different classes. So it starts with a specific class, and then other classes consume the place and change completely the landscape, etc. Whether it's like a place for the rich, and then the rich, like for example in the case of some western city, move outside to the suburbs. So the city is left, the texture of the city is left to the middle classes and lower classes. And then at one point those who are living in the suburbs want to move back to the center of the city instead of commuting. So they encourage those who are in the city to move out and make the suburb life very romanticized, you know. But then they move, they gentrify, and then they take the space again in the middle of the city. Over 50 years, the swap of positions takes place in a way. And through that, you can analyze a lot of phenomena.
Yeah.
I was just actually, because we're living in the time of Gaza, I was just explaining to some of my students a few days ago that when you say, why aren't some people moving and acting as forcefully and as emotionally as they used to do 10 years ago? Of course, because of political tyranny and because of authoritarian regimes curbing the ability of people to demonstrate and act and lobby, etc. But also because of some sociological, urban and economic reasons.
Right.
The everyday life is actually changing in a way that makes people's habits in their everyday life change. And hence, some of the issues that used to be very central seem as if they are a bit very far. You can sympathize, you can write a post or a tweet, you know, but it's not the same active participation that it used to be in many of the Muslim capitals.
What's changing?
The everyday life. In the city, that over 50, 60 years in some economies and in some societies basically introduced patterns and introduced different ways of life, because in urban sociology, for example, there is this very famous idea that urbanism is a way of life.
Right.
So when you see that cities are looking more and more alike in a global age, the way you move, the way our bodies move in the city, and the way the city is planned to control and or curb our movement is actually related to urban planning. You don't choose how to move in the city. You are either allowed to this space or not. Walkability is getting in some cities more and more difficult because you have to either use the public transportation or use your own car. But less and less spaces are given to public, like parks, etc. in some cities, like Cairo, for example. The space is very minimal compared to the number of inhabitants of the city that is estimated between 20 million and 25 million. During the day, definitely more than that, because it's like greater Cairo now. So our habits of everyday life change, and hence our mentality changes. What we can add to that is also the economy. I belong to a generation where we actually experienced the socialist regime. I was born in 1965. I remember that till I was 10 or 12, our clothes and our even shoes were bought from public sort of stores. And you had no many choices. We didn't have brands, you know, which was fine. We were happy with our life. You would have a black shoe for the school and a white shoe for the sports classes. And then a shoe for celebrations or events or whatever, birthdays or whatever. But now, if you look at our way of consumption, and then the big trap of debt, that more and more we had the national banks, and then more and more we started having the other banks, and then people started getting offers, the credit card, the loans, and your life is very much anchored in consumption in a way, from the lower middle classes to the upper classes. And this is the lifestyle that the more unprivileged classes look up to. They want to imitate that as well. And I think that the idea of the debt and making people burdened in their own life with the debt they owe to the banks and to the different entities, and you're thinking all the time about how am I going to survive and pay my bills, for example, or pay my debt. The mindset of the people makes the other big issues looks very remote, looks very distant. Ideology helps, of course. We had different waves of ideology, socialism, Marxism, Islamism, etc.
Yes.
But with the age of the decline of ideologies and rise of populism, for example, that takes away the attention from more global causes and focuses on the very ultranational, it becomes actually difficult for us to imagine the same interest, the same energy
Yes.
to support and to sacrifice for causes that are more ummatic.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is your brother Mazen Mukhtar, CEO of Baitulmaal. According to UNESCO, there are about 250 million children around the world who are not in school. This is due to war and poverty and natural disasters and other factors. These children dream of an education, of a brighter tomorrow, of making a difference in their communities. By sponsoring an education kit, you can help these dreams come true. You'll be providing stationery and textbooks, school uniforms, shoes, and much more. Your compassion today can turn into hope for a brighter tomorrow for these children. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So are you saying that since 2011, because I know you were very much invested in the revolution in Egypt, and our viewers can Google your history and see how central you were, or how you were involved in that period, a very important period, I think, in Muslim Ummah history as well as Egyptian history. But are you saying that autocratic regimes can construct cities in a way to prevent revolution, to prevent rebellion, or to prevent demonstrations and protests over issues like Gaza? There's a way to do that, and are you saying maybe that's what's happened in Egypt?
It's not only about Gaza, it's also about sort of protesting for your own
Yes.
agenda, for your own, let alone Gaza and let alone Sudan and Yemen and other issues that people should be interested in and following. Yes, of course, definitely. If you rearrange the space and place, you can obstruct the movement of masses. You can disperse the mass.
Yes.
And I have a paper that I wrote when I looked at Tahrir Square at one point.
Yeah.
This was 2019. And a picture taken for the square on a Thursday. You know, our day off is Friday and Saturdays. These are our weekend. So Thursday is a very busy day, like Friday in Istanbul, for example. It's like try to avoid the streets in the rush hour afternoon because it's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
So I looked to the picture. It was taken midday on a Thursday, and the square was very empty. A few cars here and there, a few people walking.
Yeah.
And this is not the Tahrir Square I know all my life.
Really?
A Thursday at that time, it's usually very busy. 2 o'clock, it was like 2 o'clock. And that is the time of the school buses, and people coming out of the bureaucratic institutions that are centered in downtown Cairo. So I asked myself a very simple question from the observation. Where did the mass disappear? It's like, where are the people? And then it's easy to say because of the security measures taken so that people don't meet in Tahrir Square, or that the city developed habits because of what happened 2011 till 2013. People automatically started in their system thinking that Tahrir Square is an area of, troubled demonstrations and attacks by the security, etc. So let's just avoid it. If you're driving, you start developing a habit of driving, taking the long way, but avoiding the center of the city because of what happens there all the time. So this is one explanation. And then I started exploring more about that. And it was for the first time as a political theorist, floating with the ideas in the ivory tower, that I started realizing that traffic and the way the routes are designed affects very much the density.
Right.
So there were 2 high roads that were built in the wider downtown area of Cairo that actually took the cars from one side of the Nile to the other, because Cairo is split by the Nile, so that no traffic is needed to go through Tahrir Square. Okay, what about the people? Many of the ministries that were located in Tahrir Square, including the big administrative building in the middle of the square, where actually thousands of people would go to get a stamp, to make a petition, to apply for something, to fill forms, etc., were moved outside. So here also the individual a sort of pedestrian density was very much changed.
Yes.
The third thing is that many dense areas that are poor areas that are a walking distance away from Tahrir Square, 20 minutes to 25 minutes walking distance, which is not much, were completely demolished.
Really?
And these were areas where actually people came to protest in the square with the middle class and with the different members of the syndicates that are located in downtown area, etc. They could come and join and create a mass. So these areas were completely demolished under the banner of urban development.
Interesting. So let's zoom out a little bit and sort of, I want to understand how spaces were conceptualized in classical Islamic period, if that is a right way to phrase it, and how spaces are conceptualized in the modern secular period or the modern liberal period, or however we want to phrase, or a capitalist world. What are the tangible differences between the way we historically as an ummah conceptualized our cities and how cities are constructed today?
Any city is constructed along the lines of the nature of the social bond.
Right.
So if the social bond is tribal, then you'll find that the city is basically divided amongst the different tribes. Many people don't realize that actually the Greek democracy, the direct democracy of Greece, of Athens, Athens actually had 10 tribes. It was a tribal, this very famous direct democracy was actually a tribal democracy.
Right.
10 tribes basically were settled around Athens, and they were represented in the council by 50 from each tribe. And the power in the council was rotated between the different tribes. Okay, so there is a very strong tribal foundation of the Greek direct democracy. And this is the bit that we don't give attention to. We focus on the direct democracy and the history of democracy, but not on the tribal nature. And also the role of religion is very important in any city. So if we go back to the Greek again, and then I will move to the Islamic, in the beginning of the Republic, the book of Plato, he mentions that Socrates was going to attend a religious celebration outside the city. And then he came across this group of people that started asking him to come and visit their home, old friends, and then the discussion started about justice. And this is how the book starts. So here you have religion, and also you have the celebrations outside the city where the tribes are centered, not necessarily in the very location of the city itself. Cities grow. Some cities grow, but in our modern times as well, and also in ancient times, some cities are built from scratch. They are not villages or small communities that grew into a city, and then there was a dynasty, and then a wall was built, and then we had invasions around, and then we had an empire being built, etc. No, they actually are built from scratch. St. Petersburg, for example, was built from scratch. It was designed as a city in order to serve a specific political era. When we go to the time of Prophet Muhammad, again, the city was very much tribal, divided between the different tribes. So each tribe took a side of the city, more or less. And then you have the center where there are the practices or the trade or whatever. Yeah. There was a difference between Mecca and Medina. Medina had this element of the Jewish communities. And there were two tribes that were the major tribes in Medina. And then we had the new change that took place, which is the hijrah. So you have new people coming to the city that were not seen as what we call today migrants. They were the muhajirun, more than just migrants. The migrants that share the same faith in a moment where the Prophet himself is from outside that community, and they invited him to come and to provide him safe space. And hence the fabric of the texture of the city started changing to a great extent. And the bond started becoming institutionalized to accommodate this diversity in the city and to manage it by good governance in a way. And then we have all these agreements that have been done between Prophet Muhammad and the different. It was not enough to say, I'm a prophet, they will follow me and I will rule. No, it was not enough. There needed to be some agreement and some consensus on which the city would be sort of re-established in a way as a community, not in terms of places and spaces. And then if you cannot understand it, and it was striking for me that we always read Sirah, and the Sirah is in the text describing, and in this area, the southeastern part of the Medina, there were these groups and then these groups. And this is why, for example, the Jewish community was very important and crucial in protecting the city. And when they betrayed, the punishment was so severe, etc. But no one puts a map. And looking at maps, actually, the word of map is not only about the geographical cartographic map. It's also about the social map, the economic map, but the physical map is very important for you to understand the sequence of the Sirah and how things happen this way in different circumstances. And then we have also a very important note that actually I learned from Ziauddin Sardar.
Yeah.
It was eye-opening when I read his analysis of the history of Mecca, for example, when he was drawing my attention, or our attention as readers, to the fact that Prophet Muhammad did not move back to Mecca after the Fath.
Yeah.
And if you dig into the Sirah, you'll find that he promised the people of Medina in one very famous occasion that he will not leave. When they came together, the two big tribes, and they said to him, now we are supporting you. What if you win and your da'wah spreads, etc.? And then you go back to your people, victorious leader, and then we are left behind. What happens to us?
Yeah.
And he said, this will not happen. You are my people. And he started making dua for the Ansar, etc. And actually, he fulfilled the promise. When he went back to Mecca for Fath, he arranged whatever was needed to be arranged. And then he went back to Medina. And also he was buried in Medina. So the fact also that Medina never became the center of the Islamic Empire. The Khilafah moved from Mecca to other places, Baghdad and Damascus, and historically speaking, and then it was divided between different dynasties, etc. So you can look at Kufa, you can look at Baghdad, you can look at the different cities of Andalusia, you can look at Cairo and how it developed. So the history of the cities can be actually the window through which you look at the history of civilization. Recently, Dr. Ahmed Dawood Oghlu, a very famous Turkish scholar, between brackets politician as well, but I looked more at his scholarship. Yes. He published a few years ago a book on cities, the pivotal cities that played very important role. And it was very striking that he didn't only focus on the Islamic cities. He looked at cities stretching from China to America. And there is always that tension between the image of the city that many thinkers, not only from Islamic background, but across history and different philosophers, how they looked at the cities as the hub of civility and the values. And what is not only the political contract, but also the social contract in the wider sense, the sociological contract between the people, the habits, the expectations, the norms, the codes of ethics that are in the city that actually give the city its own nature. Recently, also an Egyptian scholar, Dr. Ali Abdul Raouf, wrote a very interesting book titled From Mecca to Las Vegas. It's a very striking title. Yeah. And he was critically, very harshly criticizing the urban development of Mecca. And he said all these skyscrapers, and the big hotels around the Kaaba, etc., it actually stripped the city from its spiritual nature.
Right. How did it do that? Yeah.
Because the answer would be, what could we do? We wanted to accommodate more and more pilgrims, but also this accommodation of more and more pilgrims had its economic reasons. Right. So it was not only a spiritual cause.
Right.
There is also the economy of the pilgrimage that became a very central economy and an important income as well. But you are trying to turn it under the slogan of facilitating Hajj, because those who made Hajj quite early, many decades ago, know how hard and difficult it was, and sometimes people would be suffering a lot, and sometimes we had casualties during the Hajj, etc. So there is a good excuse to develop and do the urban development, etc., and the development of the haram itself to expand it and to be able to accommodate more and more people. But the plan itself had to be informed by the nature that this is a spiritual space.
Yeah.
And in his book on Mecca, Professor Sardar was mentioning that there were attempts to guide this urban development in Mecca towards understanding this, but it became a very important project for many firms. And at one point, the decision makers wanted to have international firms participating. And of course, they look at the city as any other city. They don't take in mind the spiritual aspect of it. And the city itself, owned by the Meccans, away a bit. If you drive away from the center of the Haram of Mecca, you'll find that the neighborhoods are very underdeveloped to a great extent. So how do we look at spaces and places, and how we do see through the space and place the history? Cities have been called in sociology different names. So sometimes they are called theater. Especially in some cities, in modern cities, people as if they are playing a role. They have to be wearing specific clothes or wearing clothes that challenge the dominant way of life if they want to prove that their ethnicity or their religion, etc. And then also the city as a palimpsest. Palimpsest is something, either it's leather or it's paper, on which there were so many writings and then washed away, and then a new text was written and then washed away, because previously there was no industry for paper, so they used different material, and then on the same material you would have more than one text on top of each other. So the city is like that. You have the original, the origin of the city, how it was written, how it was built, how it was constructed, and then whether the city is a hub of power, or it's a city of religious practices, or it's a city of importance, like Florence, for example, in Europe. If you go, this is the hub of the Enlightenment, the Renaissance, etc. So it's not Rome, but it's also a place to visit where you can see the impact of the different thinkers and the arts and the music and the what happened here and led to change later in a specific direction. So when we see our cities today, they are like a palimpsest. If you go to Cairo, for example, you'll find the ancient Egyptian layer, and you'll find the Coptic Christian layer, and then you'll find the Islamic layer, and then you'll find the modern layer. And the city has so many faces, and sometimes the layers are overlapping, and there is a hybridity. You sit in a place, you can realize that this place is out of context. It's a place where you can listen to American music, jazz or something, where you are actually in a locale in Cairo that is very much in downtown. If you walk for 10 minutes, you'll be sitting and listening to Kulthum, the most famous Egyptian singer, and finding people acting in a completely different way. And the city becomes more and more cosmopolitan. But at the same time, to which extent cosmopolitanism comes with more freedom for everyone, or social justice for all the people who are living in the city, so that they feel the ownership. Spaces and places make difference, and how they are structured and constructed affects very much our mobility, our walkability in the city, and our relations. Not only the urban planning, but also the architecture. In a city like Istanbul or Cairo, you can have old neighborhoods, but actually people know each other. In some neighborhoods, especially the more disadvantaged neighborhoods, you cannot go without someone from the neighborhood. Because usually there are some legal issues with the government. So they are afraid that you're someone coming to spy on them in order for them to pay fines or something. So you have to enter with someone from the neighborhood. They know each other very well. In other neighborhoods, people just park their cars, they go into the buildings. New buildings are like skyscrapers, and there is no notion of neighborhood. And hence the social texture and the urban texture also create the moral texture. And I wrote maybe the year 2000 or so a small text that was titled Cities Against Islam.
Okay.
That you can live in a city that every corner of the city is built on non-Islamic values, and the city itself is against you. No matter how you try to practice your religion and deen, it's not allowing you to become more moral.
How? How is the city doing that?
Yani if you are living in a place where there are no spaces for people to come together, you know, you go and vote and that's it. Thank you very much. You are a very good citizen. And then the local councils are not functional. But you have big parks. So you can take your family during the weekend and go to the park, have a barbecue, you know, good relations with your family members who come from other places, but you don't have a neighborhood. That sense of neighborhood, that we can come together and decide for our neighborhood. And I was asking around when I found that a new big building was built in the middle of a neighborhood that was very traditional. In Üsküdar, for example, a very big building and then a big mall below it. And you can visually realize that the texture is changing, the urban texture, the nature of buildings and design. And I asked the people around, did anyone consult you? You know, did anyone take your opinion? Because this is going to affect very much the way people gather, the way people shop, the way people deal with each other. And of course, it's going to affect the rent in the flats that are overlooking this area. And people were ready to sell their homes because now they can get more money for the home because it's just facing this mall or this Baladia building or whatever, and move outside the city.
Yeah.
And some people didn't because they realize the social texture. And there is a deconstruction that happens in the neighborhoods once you introduce a new design that is not matching. It's reordered around this modern type of architecture. And then you have the economic market, etc. So to which extent people keep the relations. And then you can, for example, again, examples in Cairo and examples in Istanbul, where you gentrify a street that was an old street where there were shops. You can go to buy something for your home, or, you know, you can find these shops that have the plumbing tools and things, etc. So it's just an average street, a shop to sell coffee, a shop to sell meat, you know, it's like a normal street. And then you take that street and you gentrify it, especially if it's in a historical area, and you turn it into cafes. Once you turn it into cafes, people come from outside the neighborhood to spend good time. The nature of the people in the area changes. And then you have tourists coming as well, because it's put on the list of tourism, you know, so we are going to have dinner in this street that is on the other side of the city, for example. And more, the price of flats and the rent gets higher, either to sell or to rent. And then people who are living there change. So after 20 years, the nature of the neighborhood completely changes. Yeah. And this happens for different reasons, sometimes economic and sometimes political. Yani in countries where there are tensions between the conservative forces that prefer to live in neighborhoods where they have strong bond and strong social texture, is invaded bit by bit by secular people to make projects and then to change the face of the neighborhood to become much more secularized. So there are actually cultural wars on the space and place in different cities today. And I'm sure that you can have more examples about how Muslims live and how they took some neighborhoods and how they expanded, how they declined, their presence declined in some areas because of things that have nothing to do with their intentions, but rather with wider plans of urbanization, gentrification, urban planning, etc. And we think that the moral person is a person that can decide for his own ethics and way of behavior. But actually space and place affects very much the way we can do so.
Really? So do you think that the modern Islamic world, the Muslim world, has ceded too much of its spatial imagination to Western paradigms of urban planning?
Yes.
Not
only that, because it's also economic.
Right.
The prices of land.
Yeah.
You know, how the market changes the nature of the people who are living there, and how there is internal migration in the city from one place to the other that goes unnoticed. You know, we don't see it as displacement, but it's actually called displacement in some writings.
Yeah.
Because people are forced to move. If someone knocks at your door and say, well, your house falls into the plan of our gentrification or urban planning of the new area to develop it, you know, and then we are going to have a street here. You have to move. No one takes your opinion and you have nothing to say. The sovereign authorities decided that your house is an obstacle and we have to build something here.
Yeah.
And in the case of Egypt, for example, recently we had these bridges and roads built in the center of the city, but also a very historical area was demolished that we used to call the desert of the Mamluks. But there are so many historical sites and also graveyards that date back to 100 years ago, that have so many arts, and they are a heritage, and they were completely demolished. And it was not on the political agenda, and it's only the architects and urban planners that were very concerned about it, that have more awareness about the importance of the social texture and taking it into consideration in planning. And we lost lot of historical and aesthetic spaces because of the traffic sort of development of the city. So there are so many things related to urbanization and space and place that fall into the rights of human rights as well. But we have over-politicized our Islamic agenda across the different decades because of obvious reasons, But it's also very important for us to look into the sociological, anthropological texture of our societies and how it's more and more becoming secularized without secularization being only political when it comes to politics. But the spaces are secularized in a way that would recreate the relation against your own Islamic ethics.
Yeah, so I want to understand that, because going back to your example of Mecca, you said that corporates and international hoteliers came in and effectively designed the city of Mecca as we see it today. And it is a bit of a monstrosity. I mean, you've got these steel buildings around the Kaaba, and you don't feel quite right about it. But you mentioned a very interesting point. I felt that there was a way to build that city reflecting its spiritual core. How would that be done? Like, if you were planning Mecca, from scratch, like how would you? What would Mecca look like, and how would it differ to where it is now?
I think that you have a challenge if you are a policymaker between space and density and function. So why accommodate more and more people? And
we all want to go Umrah.
Yeah, fine. Okay, but the focus is on Hajj.
Yes.
This is the pillar.
True.
Okay? And Hajj liman istata'a ilayhi sabila. Whoever finds a way to go to Hajj. So this is not a touristic site.
Yes.
This is a spiritual site.
True.
And to keep its spiritual nature, it should have specific structures that are respecting the centrality of the Kaaba. And if you have this huge building, the clock tower. Okay, I once was sitting with the previous Minister of Education in the UK, and we were sitting and discussing something about heritage, etc. And he was, at the time, he's not anymore in his position, and he went to play a role in Cambridge. So he was talking about how they are trying to preserve the heritage of Cambridge, etc. And of course, we know the very famous story of Oxford Center for Islamic Studies. The first design for the new buildings of the center were rejected by the council because they were too Islamic. And then came Dr. Abdel Hakim, and he is an Egyptian architect as well, and introduced something that blends the Oxonian architecture design with the Islamic one, and it's what is today Oxford Center for Islamic Studies. So I showed him the picture of Mecca because he was talking about heritage, and he looked at it with the big buildings around and the clock tower, etc. And he said to me, "This is graphic, yes? This is like a made up, as if they wanted to blend Mecca with modernity or something." So I said to him, "No, this is a picture."
Yeah.
I said, "You're joking." I said to him, "No, I'm not joking." I said, "This is horrible."
Yeah.
I said to him, "Exactly. I mean, this is someone who's not a Muslim." But he could realize there is something wrong here.
Yeah.
You could have designed differently, accommodated less people, but the experience that what people have is still a spiritual experience, and then set regulations to allow people only to have Hajj once and Umrah once. And then you'd limit the number. But you put a bet on having more and more people, but you change the nature of the place and the spiritual nature of it as well. And it's a challenge. I know it's a challenge. But to which extent was it taken into consideration from an Islamic perspective? Were ulama invited to say, join us, we, the urban planners, to think about the spiritual and the material in this space when we are trying to develop it? You know, how can we manage it? Especially that Mecca is surrounded by mountains. So it's very difficult to expand. It's not like enlarging it is not as easy as it seems. So, but no one is looking at that. And I think that there were attempts by some Saudi urban planners and architects to sort of say, you have to slow down a bit, and we have to take into consideration that the enlargement of the haram and more people coming needs also facilities, needs housing, etc. What happened also, because what you mentioned, tourism and hotels and chains of hotels, etc., that the class distinction became very important so now you have what we call 7 stars Hajj.
Yeah.
We have Hajj tours, or whatever you call it, yani Hajj groups going to Hajj from Egypt.
Yeah.
Some of those groups, Hajj costs £1,700,000 Egyptian pounds. And this is something like $35,000. Wow. And this is much. The problem is, once you have that level, the ceiling goes higher, but also the bottom goes higher. So the poor cannot afford anymore to go. Even if you have small hotels, 3 stars, 2 stars, 1 star, but at the end of the day, there is a transformation of the place to accommodate the upper class. Some people go to Arafah with golf cars. This is a facility. I have a friend who went with this $1,700,000 trip of Hajj, and she said she is a scholar and she needed the mahram, her brother, and her brother is a businessman. She's a socialist, interestingly, but she had to go with him. And she said that I traveled west and east. She said in the open buffet, there was food that I never saw before. So the nature of Hajj itself transforms. And I still remember when they built the big hotels, some of those hotels offer timeshare.
Yeah.
So that you can own time in these places, and you can sort of, the timeshare system, you set when the dates are for you to go, etc. And they were making the marketing with this motto, have a gaze on the Kaaba. It's like, this is exactly what Dr. Ali Abdul Raouf mentioned when he said from Mecca to Las Vegas. It's a bit harsh, the title of the book, but it's also, the reality is very harsh as well. So there is also the economic aspect, and the economic aspect not only of producing the space, but also of consuming the space. So less and less poor people in the Muslim Ummah now can actually afford Hajj, because the rich are taking more and more space. Yeah. And there is no control over this division. And also in our own cities, across time, even till recently in big cities in the Muslim world, the rich neighborhoods were close to the poor neighborhoods, and the poor would benefit from the rich. They would work somehow with them. They would provide them with services, with the food, with whatever. But now there is that urban segregation that is taking place. And once you have urban segregation, we are not brothers and sisters anymore in the city. It's the bond becomes much more. There is a stratification. And one of the little stories matter, by the way, because they indicate what the change that is going on. Yeah. And I remember that it was shared on Facebook, between Egyptian friends, a picture of a conversation that was taking place on the WhatsApp group of a compound. And the person there, it was a very, very expensive compound, and the person was saying, this is a sensitive issue, but I have to talk about it frankly. It's unacceptable that the drivers of our cars and the security people are praying next to us in the mosque.
Wow.
Yes.
Subhanallah.
But you can see it coming. If people are segregated, you can see it coming. The poor become black. It's like the race. So we should provide them with a good, nice place. We're ready to donate for that, but that they have their own place to pray. So actually what is happening is in Hajj is also the same. The rich have their place, the poor have their place. And little tricks taking place for the rich to go into specific moments, and there is a space booked for them somehow in the rituals, etc. It's subtle, but it's there. So if this is happening in the case, for example, of Egyptian companies that are providing very expensive Hajj for those who want so, and also it's very limited in time. You don't have to spend more than 1 week, 9 days or something like, because you have your business to go back to.
Yes.
You know, so you're not taking the full experience. And there is so much going on in our cities, and one of the things that are actually very interesting to remember is that when catastrophes happen, people think that it's their own fate. They don't think that this is a phenomena changing in their society. You know, they think that this person coming from the council knocking on your door and saying, your house, you have to leave because we are going to build a road here, thinks that this is his problem. But actually, so many people in other cities face the same problem, and they were not consulted. Are there any options to that plan? Can we discuss it? Can we talk about it? To which extent did you really compensate me if you pay that amount of money? Can I have actually more because I need to rearrange my life accordingly? And this, what one can call urban activism, is not there. We only move on the streets and demonstrate for big causes. But we don't defend our spaces because we feel that our spaces are not our own, that we are just, part of a wider map or a plan, and actually we have little to say. And I think this is why urban activism is very important. How the city is divided, how the city is planned, the construction in the city, the gentrification in specific neighborhoods, etc. It should be a wider participatory process where actually people have a say. But what we have is the rule of experts. If you protest, they say, experts, very important firms made that plan. Do you understand more than those important urbanists and architects? Yeah. You're just a citizen, a layperson. So you have to give in. And I don't know about statistics from other countries, but one of the statistics that I can give from the Egyptian scene is that in the last 10 years, 2.9 million have been displaced because of urban planning. Oh. So this is a number, and you're talking about a huge number. It's how do you see our spaces and places and the right of people to place and space, and how this right to place and space is Islamic? From the neighborhood where gentrification or urban planning is taking place to Gaza, because it's the macro level of displacement. And here, of course, because it's global, war and violence against the civilians is used. And the international system is incapable of protecting those people, and sometimes even blaming the victims, and those who wanted to protect those victims and defend them. There is a link. If we look at the space and place and the production and consumption and violation and the herbicide that is taking place in cities without considering it to be herbicide. Yeah. It's a genocide of places and spaces and communities, but you look at it, you put on it the label of development. But people are displaced as well. Right. And the texture is ruptured.
So this is a very Western-centric view of what development means and progress is. And that's quite radically different to maybe the way we...
Because the calculation is economic.
Right.
Yeah, now those people live, if you put the map, and there are two categories of people that use maps. Urbanists and military. The military.
Right.
They look at maps, but they don't see the walking people, the little woman who is, the woman who is living in this little place and cooking food for her children so that they find lunch when they come back from school. I mean, they look at the building and say, what is this neighborhood? Oh, its position is very strategic, And who's living there? Lower class? Yeah. No. It's like, this was all time, when this was the margin of the city. Now this is the center of the city. You have to move this community to another place. We will build them good, nice, new neighborhoods, but they have to move from here. And sometimes the governments actually gives the people new buildings for good, with good conditions. It's like you can own it over 30 years. You can pay the mortgage. It will be facilitated, etc. But do you know how much this costs and for how much it will be sold? The new neighborhood that is being developed, billions. and you're paying them pennies. So who looks at that and says, no, those people should not move?
Yeah.
Sadly, in many of our Muslim communities, in Muslim cities,
Yes.
majority Muslim cities, not other cities, fiqh is away from that. The fuqaha and the sheikhs and the ulama do not make fatwas about that.
Right.
They can make statements about Gaza. They can make statements about the war in Yemen, the famine in Sudan. But there is little written about fatwas to stop the taking of the property of people because of urban development due to capitalist calculation of economy. It's not a topic that people are interested in. And sometimes when you go back to our Islamic heritage, you find a lot of fatwas that were actually addressing issues of Umran, issues of urban planning.
Really?
Of course.
Yeah.
We have a lot.
Such as, so what sort of issues were they?
How the city was actually planned, the rights of people,
Yeah.
how to divide the right to the road, the right to the areas that are common
Yeah.
areas.
Yeah.
You know, a lot has been written by fuqaha about that.
Yeah.
It came in fatwas, it came also in books, not only in fatwa, addressing a specific dispute between two people, and then setting a rule that would continue in the madhab, for example, or in the fiqh regarding this and that. But seeing the city as like a platform for a Muslim community.
Yeah.
And you could not, even if it's your property, add another level, add another floor, if it overlooks the yard of your neighbor. You can't say, this is my property. Even if I build it to the sky, it's none of your business. No, it's our business. Because it will affect your neighbor, because you can see his yard where actually the privacy of his family is. So you can't actually go higher. Or if you build like a building, the window should not be facing the window. You design it in a way that the window is facing a wall, so that you don't open a window and your neighbor opens a window and then his privacy. Because there is that sense of the privacy, the sense of the Muslim adab,
Yes.
you know, the spaces between the different members of the family, women and children and men, etc. But now you go into small flats where actually the kitchen is in the living room. It's American kitchen, they call it. And there is like either you're going to serve your guests or your wife has to do the effort. And sometimes in some families, they don't feel comfortable about that. But this is what you can afford, because you can only afford 1+1. And there is an American kitchen in the living room.
Right.
The design itself does not allow in the building itself the flow of the air, which was written in many of the books of architecture in classic texts, for example.
Yeah.
So we have a heritage we're not aware of, and we focus more on the political. And I think that they are very much interwoven. If we lose the social, and if we lose the social and urban fabric that allows the moral to be practiced in everyday life, we will definitely lose the battle of the political.
And are we losing that battle, do you think, in the Muslim world? Are we too closely aligned now to capitalism, to Western standards of architecture, of urban development? I mean, we're in Istanbul at the moment, and you know, I think it's fair to say that Istanbul looks like any other city now around the world. Yes, it's punctuated with some really amazing mosques that date back hundreds and hundreds of years, but generally speaking, the city now looks very similar to London, looks very similar to New York. I mean, are we losing that fight, do you think?
You would lose it if you're not aware.
Right.
Because there is a standardization. Where do our children go to study architecture and urban planning?
Yeah.
To be influential in the governments or in the big businesses, etc. They go to the West.
Yeah.
And this is what they study. The function, the economic aspect. The moral aspect is not very much into the calculations. And also the empowerment of people, that they are taught and educated about the impact of place and space on their own character. It's not only that if you wish you can become ethical. No, actually there are obstacles. You know, I want to reach out to my neighbors, but I live in a building, not me, but I'm giving an example. Someone lives in a building where actually you have 30 floors, and more people are moving to these areas, and less and less people are living in the old areas, especially the young people. If I give an example with London, Canary Wharf was starting to emerge when I was in London in the 1990s, for example. And now you have many neighborhoods where actually people live in isolated units.
Yeah.
So you just go back home and you don't know anything about your neighbors. And there is a company taking care of the building, and you just pay a monthly amount. But you don't come together to discuss a problem. There is an expert. There is a company that is taking care of the problems, etc.
Yeah.
And people don't cross the boundaries or the borders of race, faith, to join, because they are facing a problem together and they want to solve it. Less and less Muslim countries I know have this cooperative system of building together that I found, for example, in the Nordic countries, in Sweden, in Norway. People come together, they build in a cooperative way and live together. And once you come together, you buy the land together, you decide for the design together, it creates a bond. And some practices are actually more Islamic at the core than some of the examples that we see in the Muslim world, where Muslims practice faith, but actually the relations and the way of constructing their material environment is very un-Islamic.
And what's the reason for that? I mean, I was recently reading, I think it was in Economist, there was a piece about Jeddah. And Jeddah, a large part of it, maybe a third, even more, has been demolished.
Yes.
Repossessed.
You could see it if you go and visit.
Really?
Full areas have been demolished.
And they've been replaced with skyscrapers. Like, why is this, why is there this sort of...
Because of the definition of progress.
Explain that,
Yeah, you want to say, I'm doing a lot of progress in the country. See, I went once to a Gulf country, and I don't have to mention the name. It will be understood from the context. And the ruler of that city, very famous city, said, Alhamdulillah, we managed to make the dream of Ibn Khaldun come true by having this Umran. And I looked at him and I just said, he doesn't realize the difference between Imara and Umran. Imara is a building.
Yeah.
Umran is something else.
What's Umran?
Umran is the ethical and moral foundation and religious foundation of a specific mode of urbanization.
Right.
So Al-Umran al-Islami is how you structure and build a city where actually the Islamic norms are dominant and where people can live in the spaces and places Islamically, where you actually have the mosque, not necessarily in the center, by the way, but the mosque is serving the community, but it also has a place for some other side services. In the case of Istanbul, every mosque has got a hammam next to it, and next to it is usually a madrasa as well. So you have these complexes, you have Sulaymaniya, and you have all these colleges around, but also a big building that was Darud Diyafa, to serve food for the poor, for example, etc. Where actually when you were serving the person, you don't see the face. There is a small window in the from the side of the kitchen where you can actually serve the shurba, the soup, but you don't see the face of the person taking the soup from you. Maybe he's your neighbor and he doesn't want preserve the dignity, etc. So this understanding of the functions of a society and how the buildings are reflecting it and allowing people to practice their life in a dignified manner next to each other and caring for each other. If the space expands, you split it so that the units become in a size where people can do so. And this is something that not only in Islamic heritage, but also in Western heritage we find. Aristotle, for example, said that a city should not be more than 40,000 people, because after that, you lose the contact with the others. You don't know who this person is. And even if you want to take the moral and apply it in imagining the material, Prophet Muhammad, for example, said, ألقِ السلام على من عرفت ومن لم تعرف. Say salamun alaykum to the person whom you meet on the street, whether you know him or not. Tamam? I can't do that in New York. I can't do that in London. I can't do that in Cairo anymore. People will think you're stupid or something crazy. If you walk around and say, salamu alaykum, salamun alaykum. So we can have big entities, but you have to divide them in a way that would create this ability of communities to emerge and people to actually have the right to the space and place and help each other become better human beings. But people are living this individualistic life, and it's becoming more and more the way of life many Muslims are experiencing in big cities.
So are we saying that skyscrapers in particular and these sort of projects of gated communities and having very exclusive places for the rich and it's, you know, far away from everyone else, these are intrinsically un-Islamic when we think about it?
Yes.
Is that what we're saying?
Yes,
really?
I think so.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting because of course, yeah, as you said,
it isolates you, and that you will end up like that man saying, we don't want those even who are serving us in the community, in the gated community, to actually pray with us.
Right.
Yeah, the prayer itself becomes class oriented.
Wow.
Because the distance, you know, he's not like me. I'm rich. You know how much I paid for this place, and now this poor guy is just standing in the mosque next to me. It's like, from his perspective, it doesn't make any sense. You know, Islam for him is that I pay my zakat and I go for this 1,700,000 Egyptian pounds Hajj. And fine, I'm a very good practicing Muslim. I don't blame him because no one explained to him that this is wrong, actually. You know, they don't want to, quote unquote, sit with the smelly people. You know, it's like the whole point is that you sit with the smelly people in Hajj. That you see the person who's coming from Nigeria and the person who's coming from Burma and the person who's coming from South Africa and maybe Latin America. And people have different habits, and you have to have sabr, and you have to stay away from argumentation, and you have to tame yourself, and you have to stand next to a very poor person who came via a very tough road, you know, and the route was very long, for him to stand next to you. I remember I was in Umrah, and then this he looked very old Indian man, maybe 80 or something. He was very slim, very, you know, his bones, you can see his bone. And it seems that I was standing on his way. I was moving for the tawaf, but yani, it seems that I was a bit slow, and he simply pushed me aside. Yani, I jumped 1 meter. You know, it's like he pushed me like this. Some people are very old but very strong, you know. And I looked at, what's the matter, you know? And he looked at me angrily, and then he kept doing his tawaf, you know. I looked at him and said, this poor guy came all the way, probably from India or from Bangladesh or something, and he wants to finish his Umrah before he passes away. This is his mentality, you know. And he waited for long, and he paid a lot. Get out of my way. You know, this is his thinking. So I just was, at the beginning, I was like, what? And then I said, okay, tamam, alhamdulillah, okay?
You're very kind.
This is the experience that you have to go through, not sit in sterilized spaces and posh hotels and as if you are going to Monaco, yani. Is this too communist or socialist or Marxist or whatever? No, it's just, you have to have a limit. You have to have a boundary, you know. People can enjoy more facilities if they can afford it. You can't deny people, because we believe in communities. There are the rich and the poor. But don't push the ceiling of the luxury to the extent that the poor can't afford the minimum level of going to Hajj. Yani, and also you have to see those people around you. You can't just separate and segregate like this. So people go to Hajj in different routes, yani, almost. The sha'air are made for people to mix and to see each other, not to be served as classes.
A couple of years ago, I was at a conference where you presented. It was a different topic, but you, in between, you mentioned something about the organization of the conference. It was an Islamic conference, and you said, why are we having this conference in the center of a city? You know, does that really reflect our Islamic ethos? And then you propose, you know, that the conference should take place in the countryside, and we should have walks, and we should have greenery around us. And explain that to me, like, you know, because in a sense you were showing there was a disconnect between the heavy Islamic topics that were being discussed and the place within which those topics were discussed. Like, explain the thinking there.
Cities, historically speaking, are setting boundaries between humans and nature. You build a city, you build a wall to protect the community, and this is something that has to do with historical development. The paradox is, it's essentially necessary for you to build dynasties and civilization, quote unquote. And this is what everyone says in philosophy, from the Greek philosophy to Ibn Haldun to Al-Farabi to whoever you name. But the paradox is, once you separate yourself from the nature to build the civilization, the clock starts ticking, because this is the beginning of rise and fall of civilizations. And once you separate yourself from nature, you keep losing the connection. And you are behind the walls. Tamam? So interestingly now, in our postmodern times, people pay a lot of money to go for safari, to go back to nature.
Yeah.
The generation of my father was the generation that moved from he was born 1920, for example. He was urban. He was born into the city. But his generation, many of them were born in rural areas, and they moved to the city for education and social mobility, etc. And they wanted to stay in the city because it's a development that they were told is more progressive. Tamam? My generation and my children's generation, the dream is to retire in countryside.
Yes.
So it's like the city is attracting you, but you realize people become disenchanted. Now I end up in the city alone. My children go to different places in the world because of the global economy. I don't want to stay in the middle of my sort of cement building. If I'm going to end up alone, let me end up alone in the nature. Yani in a small town where people are still keeping the social habits and where I can have like chit-chats with different friends around and neighbors, and then I can go for a walk and I can see the greenery, etc. So the paradox of the human history is that we have to establish cities where actually services are provided, bigger number, wealth, etc. But once you do that, you lose the connection with the nature. And I think that if we are thinking about the future for our Islamic cities, they should be open to nature, and also schooling should be open to nature. Yani the fact that we are locking the kids for 12 years in their lives in schools that have walls, that have classes with density and a small window and then electricity, and as if you are having like chicks in this plant where you have a chicken, bringing up chicken or breeding chicken. Ilm needs this connection with the universe, this connection with the world around you, seeing the plants, seeing the mountains. So why are we holding our conferences in hotels? Yani the notion of the hotel itself is a very, yani we had the khan, you know, where people can eat, but also it's in the middle of the market, in the bazaars, you know, and there was a different texture where also you are hospitalized. You receive the hospitality of the people around you. You can go to the mosque. First place you go to, when you go to a new city, you go to the mosque. And there is that description of the Sufi tariqas. They were not only in specific cities, they were crossing the Muslim Ummah. So you go to a city and you ask for the Naqshbandi tekke or for the Mawlawi tekke. And once you go there, they will receive you, or you go to the mosque and someone next to you realizes you are a stranger, you come to my home, you stay with me at least for 3 days, this is your right as a Muslim, etc. So the texture of the society is different, and it's open to the nature around in most of the time. So I think that we have to have a different imagination about two things. What is success and what is happiness? And I think that part of the definition of success of our modern times is property. That you have more and more property. It doesn't mean that property is not important, but the fact that you're successful by having property and by living in a separate place, in a gated community where only the poor, where only the rich live and the poor cannot enter, and you have the gates and the security and the cameras and the surveys and everything. And happiness is that this is happiness. This is the ultimate goal that I should look up to if I am a young person and I want to establish my career to reach that point when I can provide my family with such luxurious way of life. This is not actually what we are looking for. How do you want to build our schools? Just like any other school, but with the sort of Islamic name on the wall? Or our schools are different. They have fountains in the middle. You listen to the sound of water. The classrooms have big windows so that you can see nature around you. It's surrounded, it's at the edge of the city, and then there are forests around where children are taken in the breaks to explore nature around, etc. Maybe have a deer one day jumping into your school, and then everyone is looking at that creature. So how do we imagine the good life? And I think that this is the core problem that we are having today. What is a good life, and how we can define it?
Are we more inclined to, is our fitra, more in our human nature, does it incline us to settle in a single place, or are we more inclined to be nomadic in our?
And this is a big issue now in sociology and anthropology. It's not only about the movement, it's also about the mentality.
Right.
There is a very nice book titled The Tribal Imagination.
Yeah.
And it was written by a professor in Harvard, and he said, and he himself is the son of modernity, and he is the person who likes individualization, etc. But he said, from my research, I found out that actually humans don't think in an individual way.
Yeah.
We all share a tribal imagination. Right. You always have these calculations. I have this offer in Japan, but my mother lives in Pakistan, and my brother lives in Cairo, and the sister in London. How am I going to travel and leave my mother? How can we organize together that someone takes care of the elderly in the family? And then you might end up refusing. You might end up declining simply because, and people would say, are you crazy? This is your way to become a CEO, but you have different priorities. Yeah. What do I want from life, etc. So people have to think about this, their own definition of a good life and what it means. It doesn't definitely mean that I would die alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are by nature both nomadic, but we need to settle. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described in the Quran the creation of the human. He said, وَاللَّهُ أَنْبَتَكُم مِّنَ الْأَرْضِ نَبَاتًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you like plants. You have to have roots. And if you move, you have to move with your roots. You go to a different soil, but you can't cut the roots and expect that when you move to the new soil and be given some water, that the roots would grow necessarily. That you might die. Die in terms as a plant, and just stay there like something on the surface. Yani. Yes. So though people travel, and we have communities that have 3-4 generations outside their country of origin, but what is so great, especially the Pakistanis and Indians and Bangladeshis, etc., that they care very much for bringing their children to the roots. The Palestinians, for example, they still teach their children. They eat the same food, they sing the songs, they wear the same things, they keep the memories and the pictures of the grandfathers. They have a family archive, It's important to root yourself in a community. And then if you want to change the habits of the community, this is a good struggle as well, You don't have to live like your grandfather, and you don't have to encapsulate your identity in one part, but you have to have roots. You have to think of yourself as a person who belongs. And being is important. This being in philosophy, we're not only as we are born, we become all the time different things and we change, fine. But you also have to have some constant elements in your life through which you identify who you are. And I think that it has to do with the religion and culture. Because also in the world of Islam, we are different. Yeah. We have different cultures. Yeah. I'm Egyptian, you come from Indian background. If you go to Indonesia, people act in their everyday life a bit differently. What is going to unite us, sadly, is not Islam. What is going to unite us is the way of life of urban life. And we have to be aware that it's very standardized and it cuts the relations with the localities and the vernacular in a way. And we have to think of preserving that as part of preserving the texture in which a good community can grow.
Yeah.
And there is a challenge. Urbanization is a challenge.
Yeah. As we wrap up, I want to reflect on Gaza. I mean, it's horrific what has happened to Gaza, and the place has been destroyed, and majority of its buildings are now rubble. And there's conversation about two versions of Gaza. You've got the Trump Riviera Gaza, right, which again will look very much like Dubai or one of these sort of Gulf states. But there's very little discussion, obviously so, because the people of Gaza are still facing this horrific reality. But there's very little discussion about what Gaza would look like. Like if we had a situation where we were able to claim Gaza back, and inshallah, this would not be in any distant future, and the Muslims of Gaza were able to live and flourish in that place, what would it look like spiritually? What would it look like from an urban perspective that you would satisfy this conversation we've had today satisfy the conditions of the type of communities we want to establish?
Sometimes the division of big families is a target.
Right.
So if you suggest, of course, put aside the Trump Riviera thing, yani, which is possible, by the way, they might just do it, yani.
Yeah.
But if you are planning for the people, if they want to go back, if they have the right to go back, the right of return to their land as well, then you have to take into consideration the social texture of Gaza. People have big families.
Yeah.
The plans that I saw recently are offering big buildings, these like 60s type buildings that the building is like a long building, not skyscraper, but long building. And then you have 2+1 flats, 1+1 flats. 1+1 flats in Gaza?
No.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Where people have usually average of 6 to 8 children. Through that planning, you are doing actually family control.
Really?
Because if people live there, there is no way that they can have more children, So you force by the structure a way of life. I have a flat of 2+1, and I am a person who survived. I have only one member of my family living with me, and then if it's my mother, if it's my father, and I need to marry, and this is what I have, I can get a wife, and my father can live with me or my mother. But practically speaking, I can only have one child. And there will be a decline in the number of people in the coming 30 years.
Yeah.
So if you save them now, you are basically killing them in a way that is very subtle for the coming 30 years of the future, and the number of the people of Gaza will decline, and the lifestyle will be different. Look at how China, for example, completely different example, controlled birth by imposing this policy of only one child. And it led to the killing of girls.
Yeah.
There was a genocide for female babies because they want boys. And it went under the carpet, that so many girls, when they were born, they were killed because they have only one chance.
Yes.
And then the structure of the family became very vertical.
Yes.
If you have one child, in one generation, there are no cousins. It's just vertical. It's not horizontal. So the society itself completely changed within 30 years by this policy.
Yeah.
So either by controlling birth or by limiting the space that people have for their homes, there must be a way to design for the people of Gaza to keep the way of life people have, having many children in the families, but at the same time, the land of Gaza is very limited. This is a challenge for the urban planners. How can we keep this society as it is, serving its own causes and having its own practices, and without and facing the challenge of the small, because it's the most dense place in the world, by the way. At one point before the genocide, it was very dense. How are we going to solve this problem? This is a challenge for the Muslim architects and urbanists, But it's not by building buildings that are basically changing and transforming the nature of the society, and hence its ability to defend itself. So the spatial and the place and the architecture and the urban are challenges for our Muslim way of life that we need to discuss. There is no single answer for the question, but at least it should be put on the agenda of how do we live and what is our material environment and how it's affecting us as Muslims.
Dr. Heba Raouf, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. I found that a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for hosting me, and I wish your project of the thinking Muslim all the luck. Because all Muslims should be thinking.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you. Jazakallah khair.
Please remember to subscribe to our social media and YouTube channels, and head over to our website thinkingmuslim.com to sign up to my weekly newsletter. Jazakallah khair.